By the time he was 52 years old, English actor Arthur Lowe had become a household name. He rapidly rose to prominence as one of the most recognizable personalities on British television, unfortunately at a time in his life when he was most capable of making an impact as an actor. He faced a serious threat to his career due to complicated health issues. Join FactsVerse UK as we bring you everything on how Arthur Lowe's career ended. His acting career timeline. Lowe was introduced to the world of acting by his father. He organized private trains for traveling circuses and theatrical troupes, among other unique rail journeys and excursions. In 1945, he introduced Lowe to Eric Norman in the hopes that Norman would be able to obtain Lowe an audition with the Frank H. Fortescue Famous Players repertory group. Lowe was offered a trial right away for the role of Dixon in the comic play Bedtime Story. He made his acting debut in this part on December 17, 1945, at the Manchester Repertory Theatre. For his 2 nightly shows, Lowe earned £5 each week. During his 8 months at Fortescue's, he was in 33 productions and performed 396 times. Throughout his career, Lowe performed with various theatrical companies. Having spent 1946 and 47 at the County Theatre in Hereford, he relocated to London in 1948 and spent the next 3 years primarily performing in theatres in South London. A breakthrough role for Lowe occurred in 1952, when he played Senator Brockbank in the London Coliseum production of the musical Call Me Madam. He also appeared in the 1954 London revival of Pal Joey and starred as the salesman in the premiere West End production of The Pajama Game for 18 months, spanning 1955 to 57. In 57, he made his Broadway debut as Bert Vokes in the murder melodrama A Dead Secret, performed at the Piccadilly Theatre, and he received his first critical acclaim for his work in the West End. In 1951, he made his debut TV appearance on the BBC show I Made News. He had several small parts in dramas and even a recurring role on the crime show Murder Bag in the 50s. His first regular appearance on TV was in the ABC series All Aboard, when he played a ship steward, Sidney Barker. Beginning in 1960, Lowe starred as Leonard Swindley, a draper and lay preacher on the British soap Coronation Street, in which he remained a regular cast member until 1965. His breakout role as Home Guard Battalion Leader Captain Mainwaring in the BBC comedy Dad's Army came to him in 1968. Co-workers on the show afterwards said that he was pretentious and incompetent, just like the character he played. On the other hand, Frank Williams believed this was an inaccurate assessment. He thought Lowe could laugh at himself, even though he didn't like being fooled and was always sure of his thoughts. Frank was among the minority who believed he was generous and caring. Lowe's work continued to include theater parts even while Dad's Army was not in production. After seeing him in the role of A.B. Ram, a divorce counsel in Somerset Maugham's Home and Beauty at the Old Vic in 1968, Laurence Olivier urged him to join the National Theatre. In 1974, he returned to the company to play Stefano in a Peter Hall production of The Tempest with John Gielgud in the title role. The BAFTA for Best Actor in a Supporting Role went to Lowe for his work in Oh Lucky Man, 1973, and If, 1968, both directed by Lindsay Anderson. Before joining Dad's Army, Lowe worked with his fellow Dad's Army actor Ian Lavender on the BBC radio comedy Parsley Sidings and as Mr. Macabre in a BBC television adaptation of David Copperfield. Mr. Men, a BBC animated television series in which he voiced several characters, was notable for his extensive use of character voices. His clever trick against the press. Ian Lavender, who used to work with Arthur Lowe on Dad's Army, has talked about how Arthur dealt with the press. He says Arthur used his sleep disorder as an excuse to avoid being photographed. Lowe feigned to fall asleep anytime the paparazzi came close. He would occasionally close his eyes and snore in public to evade prying eyes and maintain his privacy. His cunning disguise also let him avoid the attention of overzealous fans who would otherwise follow him around demanding an autograph. However, the strategy was not always successful. He was caught when he tried to conceal a laugh or peek out of the corner of his eye to see whether his pursuers had left. Despite that, Lowe would still pretend to be asleep whenever it was convenient. At a press conference celebrating Audio Go's publication of the new Mr. Men audiobook cartoon series, Lavender remarked that Arthur seemed like a kind guy when he allowed you in and was very protective of his privacy and relied on narcolepsy to do so. Narcolepsy was a known recurring sleeping condition that Arthur battled. So when he didn't want to be disturbed by admirers or photographers, he'd pretend to be asleep to avoid confrontation. Because of this, he was labeled a pretentious egoist whose real-life persona was not too distant from his on-screen love-hate role. Lavender revealed that Lowe also possessed a friendly, human, and naughty side, saying he hoped the information would shed light on the ambiguities of the comic. He went on to say his haughty character originated from the general public's mistaken belief that, as a media personality, he belonged to them and was public property. Arthur was well aware of the perception of him as a pretentious man and often acted accordingly. He did it as a means of building a barrier. Even though he frequently dozed off, you could always see him keeping one eye up to check on them. However, some people used to poke and prod him, trying to rouse him up, so he couldn't always pretend to be asleep. How his health conditions impacted his career. Midway through the 1970s, Lowe was already experiencing symptoms of narcolepsy, which caused him to unexpectedly nod out during performances, rehearsals, and other situations, often in the middle of a sentence. As Lowe put it, people frequently suspected him of intoxication, even though he was almost always sober. Although both of Lowe's biographies mention his heavy drinking, neither suggests that it led to alcoholism. Additionally, Lowe was a smoker whose rising weight and lack of physical fitness led to a minor stroke in 1979. Though his general health was deteriorating and narcolepsy was worsening, he still managed to keep a full work schedule. Many of those who know him think that if he hadn't been such a workaholic, he would have retired a lot sooner. In the years after Dad's Army ended in 1977, Lowe continued to be in high demand, playing in a number of hit comedies on television. These include Bless Me Father, in which he played the prankster Catholic priest Father Charles Clement Dudleswell, and Potter, in which he played the oblivious businessman Redvers Potter. In 1980, he took a production of Derek Benfield's Beyond a Joke on a tour of Australia and New Zealand. However, because of his illness, Lowe quickly became involved in the television commercial business, appearing in no less than 19 commercials that year. In his senior years, he and his wife Joan toured the English countryside as part of his theater career. But because of his strict policy of only accepting theater plays in which Joan was cast, Lowe missed out on a few promising roles. According to his agent, Peter Campbell, the last 10 years of his theatrical career were blown by this illness, and he believed Lowe's mother put unreasonably high demands on his father to secure her jobs. Similarly, Lavender said that Lowe's narcolepsy made him play it safe by limiting his roles. After the success of Dad's Army on radio, a sequel called It Sticks Out Half a Mile was created in 1981, and Lowe returned to the character of Captain Mainwaring for the pilot. That year for Christmas, he and Joan performed in the pantomime Mother Goose at Victoria Palace in London. For a cameo appearance in the Wagner television miniseries, Lowe traveled to Venice in January of 1982 on Richard Burton's personal aircraft. His demise and late-released works. On April 14, 1982, Lowe was interviewed on Pebble Mill at 1 for a live television broadcast. At around 6 o'clock that evening, he was having trouble walking in his changing room at the Alexandra Theatre in Birmingham, England, owing to the onset of a stroke. This was prior to a performance of Home at 7, in which he was scheduled to act alongside his wife, Joan. Sadly, he collapsed and was transferred to Birmingham General Hospital, where he passed away at around 5 a.m. He died at age 66. After a brief funeral, of which only a select few were informed, and less than a dozen people showed up, Lowe was cremated, and his ashes were strewn at Sutton Coldfield Crematorium. His wife Joan was performing in Belfast at the time and declined the invitation since she could not miss the show. A friend of the couple said the pair had agreed beforehand that they would not attend each other's funerals. Lowe had also remarked that his parents were not sentimental or religious, and Joan's mantra in the face of tragedy was "the show must go on." Unfortunately, the premieres of Lowe's final films and TV roles occurred after his passing. Britannia Hospital, directed by Lindsay Anderson, was his last feature film in 1982. His final sitcom role was as a prep school principal for males in the 1982 sitcom A.J. Wentworth, B.A. The film part of Wagner, which Lowe played in December of 1983, was his last in the film industry. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite memory of Arthur Lowe? Let us know in the comments section below.